All right, so are you ready to trade in those flip-flops for some ice skates?
Always up for a little hockey, especially when it comes from across the pond.
Because today's deep dive, we are heading over to the Netherlands, the Eredivisie season. It's just getting started.
Ah, you mean it's time for some preseason action? The perfect time to spot those hidden gems and maybe get a little ahead of the game.
That's what we like to hear. And speaking of getting ahead of the game, you sent us quite the scouting report. Game summaries from the Vriendschappelijke Wedstrijden.
The friendly matches.
Exactly. You know you're Dutch. Plus, you included the Eredivisie team pages. So it sounds like you're not just looking for, like, basic box scores.
No way. We want the inside scoop, those trends that might not be so obvious.
We're talking about separating those preseason flukes from the teams and players who are, like, actually ready to make a run for the title.
It's all about who's bringing the heat early on.
Exactly. Okay, so speaking of bringing the heat, did you know that Utrecht Dragons, their captain, Brock Montgomery,
Wait, hold on. Like the Brock Montgomery.
like the bear, how good is that?
That's incredible.
Right, speaking of the Dragons, though, remember all those, like, penalty minutes that racked up against their rivals? The Dordrecht Lions?
Yeah, there are a lot of slashing and roughing calls. It makes you wonder if it's just preseason jitters or are they trying to lay down the law early?
It's true. Sometimes, like, you see those preseason penalties, and it's a sign. Other times, they're just preseason penalties.
You got it. We don't want to overthink it, but it is something to keep our eye on.
100%. Now, one thing that I noticed, like, right away, all the goalie changes. Like, you don't really see that much shuffling around once the season gets going. So what gives? Why are coaches pulling their goalies in these friendlies?
Great question. You might think it's just random, but actually those goalie changes can be very telling.
Okay, I am intrigued. Tell me more.
Preseason. It's a time for assessment. They're seeing who's got what it takes, who's ready for the big leagues, and who might need a little more time to develop.
So, like, in that, I mean, we have to talk about it, that 8-2 game between Eindhoven and Groningen. You don't usually see coaches swapping goalies with a score that lopsided.
Right. That one definitely raised some eyebrows. But if you take a closer look, Groningen's goalie actually had a pretty decent save percentage for the first two periods.
So pulling him wasn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, not at all. More like giving the backup a chance, right? Throw him in the deep end. Let's see what he can do.
Get some experience under pressure.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's less about you're benched and more about let's get you some valuable ice time,
Exactly.
which makes looking at those box scores even more interesting.
Absolutely. Every detail matters.
And speaking of interesting details, you sent us some games with a lot of penalty minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, are these guys trying to get a head start on the season or what?
Well, you know those penalty minutes, they can actually be super insightful, especially this early in the season.
All right, so break it down for us. What are they telling us?
Well, first you got to look at the types of penalties. Are these like silly mistakes, or are we talking about a pattern of aggressive behavior?
We definitely saw a lot of, like, roughing and slashing calls in those games. And let's not forget about that 5-minute major for fighting, Utrecht's Mechelen. Straight to the sin bin.
Right. And those are interesting because there are a couple of ways to interpret that, right? Like sometimes when you have new players on a team, they come out a little hot, trying to make a statement, find their place.
I'm going to impress the coach.
Exactly. Or maybe the team as a whole is experimenting with a more physical game, seeing what they can get away with.
Interesting. So they're using these friendlies to see just how much they can get away with before the regular season starts.
You got it. Or it could just be, pure frustration. Because even though they're just friendlies, these guys are still competitors at heart. They want to win.
Yeah.
And if it feels like things aren't clicking, that frustration, it can lead to some, shall we say, questionable decisions on the ice.
The good old, we're not playing well, so let's start throwing elbows strategy.
Hey, it happens, but not exactly a recipe for long-term success.
Right, not at all. So what do you think this all means? Like, when you see this many penalties early on, does it tell you anything about those team strategies? What can we expect from them when the regular season kicks off?
It's tough to say for sure, but if I'm a coach and I'm seeing a lot of unnecessary penalties from my players, I'm definitely going to be emphasizing discipline as we move closer to the real deal.
Right. No coach wants their star player stuck in the penalty box
Yeah.
during a crucial game.
Exactly.
No arguments there. All right, well, enough about the bad boys of the Eredivisie. For now, let's talk about the guys who are lighting up that scoreboard.
Now you're talking.
Any standout performances catch your eye in those box scores? Anyone we should be getting excited about?
There are always a few guys who really shine in the preseason, but you have to remember it is just preseason.
So don't get too carried away just yet.
Exactly. It's not always a perfect indicator of what's to come.
Okay, fair enough. But surely there were some impressive numbers, right?
Yeah.
Give us the good stuff.
Okay. How about Jacob Karlsson playing for Eindhoven? He's been putting up some serious points.
Oh, yeah, I've got him pulled up here. Multiple goals in almost every game. Okay, now those are some numbers I can get excited about.
Right. And it's not just the goals themselves. Look at the assists.
So he's not just a scorer, but a playmaker, too. That's huge.
Exactly. That tells me he's not just thinking about his own stats, he's creating opportunities for his teammates, which is what you want to see.
He's elevating the whole team.
Exactly. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean Eindhoven is going to run away with the title or anything.
It's still early days.
Exactly. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on, for sure.
For sure. So we've been talking a lot about individual players, but what about those team dynamics? Can we get any sense of overall strategies or team chemistry from these friendlies?
I think we can. For example, the Red Eagles over in Sertogenbosch, they're all about that fast-paced offensive game.
Oh, I noticed that too. Lots of risks, lots of shots on goal.
Exactly. They're all about puck possession and attacking that net no matter what. Now, whether that strategy will work against the tougher teams in the regular season, well...
That's the million-dollar question. It's high risk, high reward, that's for sure.
Exactly. And then you have teams like Tilburg taking a more, shall we say, conservative approach.
Yeah, they're playing it a little safer.
Right.
More focused on defense.
Exactly. They're all about shutting down the opponent, limiting those scoring opportunities.
Which makes sense. I mean, they are the defending champs. They've got a target on their back.
Exactly.
So you've got the risk takers like Den Bosch, the more conservative champs over in Tilburg. And then what? Teams like Lou Warden's OG Capitals, are they somewhere in between?
They're straddling that line, for sure. They're not quite as aggressive offensively as Den Bosch, but they're also not playing quite as defensively as Tilburg.
So finding their balance.
Exactly. And that's smart, especially in the preseason. This is the time to experiment.
Okay, so we've got different styles of play emerging, some standout individual performances. We even dove into the psychology of those preseason penalties. But here's the thing. What does it all mean?
The age-old question.
Can we actually predict the Eredivisie champion based on a handful of games in September? I mean, can we really crown a champion based on a few preseason games?
Probably not, but it does give us some clues.
Okay, so what clues are you picking up?
Well, let's rewind for a second. Remember that 8-2 game we were talking about, Eindhoven and Groningen?
Hard to forget a game with that kind of score.
Right, but here's the thing. It wasn't the blowout you might think.
Really?
Groningen actually held their own for the first couple of periods. They were playing disciplined, keeping it close.
So what happened?
Then, bam, everything changed.
The floodgates opened. Eindhoven's offense just took over.
It's like someone flipped a switch. They started capitalizing on every little mistake, turning those defensive turnovers into scoring opportunities left and right.
So it's a good reminder that even in these friendlies, games can be won or lost in a matter of minutes.
100%. It's about more than just how many goals you score. It's about when you score them and how you create those opportunities.
It's those small details that can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
Speaking of those small details, were there any other teams where maybe their overall strategy caught your eye? I mean, we talked about Den Bosch and their high-octane offense, Tilburg playing it a bit safer, but what about those teams that are maybe still figuring things out?
Well, Nijmegen really piqued my interest. They seem to be testing out a very, very aggressive forechecking system.
So putting a lot of pressure on the puck carrier in the offensive zone.
Exactly. Now, it can be a risky strategy, but
if they pull it off.
if they can execute it, it can be incredibly effective. It's all about forcing those turnovers, creating scoring chances.
So they're playing a bit of a high-risk, high-reward game.
Exactly. And like we've been saying, preseason is the time to experiment.
See what works.
Exactly. It's a bold strategy. Will it pay off? Who knows?
That's what makes this so exciting. Anything can happen.
Exactly. That's the beauty of a new season, right? All those possibilities. It's like a fresh sheet of ice ready to be written on.
I love that. And, I think that's what we'll leave our listeners with today.
What's that?
That sense of possibility.
Yeah.
The Eredivisie, it's a league on the rise.
Without a doubt.
The talent is incredible.
Absolutely.
So buckle up, hockey fans, because this is going to be a season you won't want to miss.